Ethan never believed he would receive anything from his grandfather, Harold. The man was ever a taciturn, enigmatic figure, his life as reliable as the wind that blew through the limbs of the trees that surrounded his rural cabin. Harold was to Ethan a relic of the past, a man who had chosen to keep himself apart from the conveniences of modern life. He never understood his grandfather's routines, or even really considered his reclusive life. But when word of Harold's death reached him, Ethan felt a strange loss, an awareness that the old man had taken many secrets to the grave with him. The last he figured on receiving was a call from an attorney informing him that Harold had bequeathed something to him, a gigantic, old iron safe. The discovery amazed Ethan. What would anyone keep in a safe which had rested padlocked for decades? In front of the giant steel box, its front covered in dust and age, his curiosity increased. He followed his fingers along the rusty lines, the weight of the secret pressing down. There was no key, no code written out. It was a challenge left to him by his grandfather, one that Ethan was compelled to unravel. Harold had always imagined lived simply, making ends meet on the profit of his own small farm. But the presence of a locked safe told a different story. What had the old man kept hidden all these years? Ethan was set on discovering the truth and vowed that he would not rest until the safe was opened. But as he wrestled with the code, he could have no idea that he was about to open something far more than an inheritance. He was about to unravel a tale of greed, dishonesty, and a secret that had remained concealed for over half a century. The safe stood like a monolith. Its massive weight, the only reason it was even remotely possible to get into his truck with the help of a few friends. Ethan had done so, but now it occupied the corner of his garage. He was no further ahead than when he first laid eyes on it. The steel door was heavy, its dial worn from years of working with time. It was clear that Harold never intended this safe to be cracked open with ease. Ethan spent weeks attempting all kinds of ways to crack it. He watched YouTube tutorials, tried to listen for the slightest clicks as he turned the dial, and even considered hiring a locksmith. But something held him back. If Harold had gone to the lengths he did to have the safe locked away, then perhaps it was meant to remain so. But the thought of not getting to the bottom of the mystery bothered him. What might be in there that is so precious, so confidential, that it has to be concealed from relatives? Then, just when he was about to lose hope, he found an old letter stuck within one of Harold's books. The paper had turned yellow in his palms as he read the words penned in his grandfather's unmistakable handwriting. The numbers of our past hold the key. Ethan was perplexed at first. Numbers of our past? A date? A coordinate? He needed to look into it further. Sitting in the midst of his grandfather's belongings, the old furniture and faded photographs, he began piecing together Harold's history. He searched through birth certificates, discharge forms from the military, even deeds to land, seeking a clue. And then finally, he found it, a line of numbers stamped on an antique dog tag that Harold had worn during his military service. The rhythm had been meaningless. But the instant Ethan put them in place with great care to the safe dial, a loud click sounded within the silence. His heart was pounding his chest. He'd done it right, at last. And what lay behind the door would change everything in his life. As soon as the safe rolled open, there came a burst of expectation drowning Ethan. There, he found what appeared to be a collection of old letters, their envelopes withered and crackling with age. Below them was a black and white photograph, with Harold appearing as a much younger man, standing with a group of men whose faces Ethan did not recognize. What really caught his eye, however, was a little wooden box, placed gingerly as though something precious lay within. His fingers trembled as he raised the lid. Inside, glowing in the dim light of his garage, were several gold coins, their fronts untouched by years. Ethan took a breath. Gold? Where did this come from? Probing deeper, he found something else, a creased, yellowed piece of paper. He unfolded it with care, and his eyes widened in astonishment. It was a land grant, but not for his grandfather's country cabin. This land was in another state, one Ethan had never even heard of. Questions swirled in his mind. Why hadn't Harold ever told him about this? Why had he possessed a second tract of land, hidden from all view? And who were the men in the photograph? The more Ethan dug into the mystery, the more he realized that his grandfather had led a life he had never known, a life that had tried to be interred. And now, he was about to exhume the truth, regardless of whether he was ready for it or not. As the seriousness of his discovery sunk in, Ethan couldn't help but believe that he had discovered something far greater than an inheritance. The gold coins were priceless, but the deed to the land was even more puzzling. His grandfather had never once mentioned owning any property besides a family farm. Yet the document was absolute proof that he had held this one back for years. In a bid to learn more, Ethan took a journey to the address listed on the deed. The drive led him down winding roads, far into a remote rural region where the earth stretched open for miles with scarce a living creature in sight. Upon arrival, he was met with an eerie sight, a small, empty cabin in the middle of the property, its wooden frame worn away by time and neglect. Stepping inside, dust swirled around his ankles, the wooden floorboards creaking beneath his feet. It was clear that no one had stepped foot in this building for many years. Yet, he was certain that something or someone was watching him. His heart pounding, he scanned the room, his gaze landing on an ancient chest in the corner. It was padlocked, just like the safe had been. Was this another puzzle Harold had left behind? Or was something more sinister afoot? Ethan had come too far to turn back now. Whatever Harold had buried, he was going to uncover it. But as he reached for the lock, a sudden noise outside stopped him dead in his tracks. Someone else was present, and they did want him to discover what was within. Ethan's breath caught as he stood stock still, holding his ears up for the sound of snuffling at the cabin door. His heart pounded away in his chest, throbbing like a drumbeat through the stillness. He swallowed hard, trying to stay steady. His mind ran over the possibilities. Had it been an animal, or something more sinister? Had someone been tracking him? A distant shuffle echoed again, closer this time. The urge to flee caught at him, but so did an overwhelming sense of rebellion. He hadn't traveled all this distance just to give up now. Cautiously, he made his way towards the closest window, trying not to make any noise. The moonlight through the shattered glass cast ominous shadows on the walls. He looked out, observing the surroundings. Then he spotted it, movement along the tree line. A shadowy figure half concealed behind the branches, watching. Whoever they were, they weren't lost campers. They'd come for the same reason Ethan had. But how did they know? And what were they looking for, anyway? He took a step away from the window, his mind whirling for a plan. His grandfather had clearly left this mystery behind for a reason, but was it worth it in terms of risk? He approached the locked chest, aware that the clues might be inside. But how long did he have before whoever was outside made a move? Ethan's fingers trembled as he refocused his attention on the ancient chest. It was solid, its corners reinforced with bands of iron that had rusted to a pale color. He knew he had to force it open, fast. He pulled out a crowbar from his backpack, wedging it between the lid and lock. With every creak and groan of metal on wood, he winced, knowing that every sound might give anyone away. A thud outside froze him in his tracks. His own breathing was shallow gasps as he fought to hear. Footsteps. Someone was approaching. He urged himself forward, pushing until crack. The lock broke and the lid creaked open. Inside the box, he found another stash of documents, stacks of old money, and a small leather-bound journal. He shoved the journal into his jacket and opened it, reading the first few pages. The handwriting was unmistakably that of his grandfather. They will be coming to look. Don't trust anyone. Keep it quiet until you know who to tell. Ethan swallowed hard. His grandfather had been aware that this would happen. He had known that someone, maybe the same individuals who had stolen the treasure so many years ago, would eventually arrive searching for it. The thought sent a chill through Ethan. He had discovered something far more valuable than an ancient legacy. This was a secret worth dying for. The moment Ethan closed the journal, a loud crash shattered the silence. The cabin door had been kicked open. He barely had time to react before a shadowy figure burst into the room, a shaft of flashlight slicing through the dust-filled air. "Who's there?" a gruff voice shouted. Ethan's heart pounded as he clutched the journal against his chest. His instincts were yelling at him to run. But where? The cabin only had one door, and the intruder stood in front of it. He hid behind an overturned table, his mind spinning for an exit plan. The footsteps approached. I know someone's here, the man growled. You think you can hide? Ethan's eyes jerked to the rear window, his sole recourse. Panting rapidly, he sprinted for it, throwing it open as the flash of the flashlight swept across his direction. Hey! With no hesitation, Ethan flung himself through the opening, coming down hard on the ground outside. Pain surged through his shoulder, but he didn't ease up. He climbed to his feet and took off running for the woods, the sound of pounding footsteps coming behind him. Whoever these people were, they weren't about to let him get away with his grandfather's secrets. Twigs and branches rasped against Ethan's arms as he sprinted through the heavy brush. Sharp night air scorching his lungs. Yet he wouldn't give way, sustained by hard-wired adrenaline. His captors were getting close. He could hear their ragged breathing and snapping sounds of their approaches. Down the road, he spotted a ravine, steep, rocky bottom barely visible in the moonlight. He had two choices: turn back and risk being taken, or leap of faith. He clenched his teeth and made up his mind. He jumped. The instant his feet left the earth, time slowed. Wind whipped past him as he rolled down the hill, thudding onto the ground and rolling through the dirt. A bolt of pain went through his ribs, but he suppressed a grunt. He couldn't quit now. Men above him yelled in rage. Find another way down, one of them roared. Ethan crept into a thicket, as still as possible against the ground. He held his breath, listening to the men attempting to locate another way down. The minutes passed, but they were like hours. Finally, the voices faded away. Ethan breathed unevenly, his mind still reeling. He needed to get out of here, and fast. But he wouldn't be hiding forever. It was time to take a stand. Ethan returned to his car, his entire body aching from the ordeal. Driving away from the cabin, his mind spun with questions that had no answers. Who were those men? What did they want? And most importantly, what was in this journal that made them so desperate to get their hands on it? He stopped to gas up at a gas station, parking under the harsh fluorescent lights. Shaking hands, he opened the journal for the second time, turning over more pages. The entries talked of treachery, of a group of men who had stumbled upon a treasure but turned against each other in greed. His grandfather had stashed his share, not out of selfishness, but to keep it from the wrong people. And now, years later, those hands had come looking for it. Ethan understood he had a choice. He could hide, remain on the move, and pray that the men never found him. Or he could speak the truth, so that his grandfather's reputation would be secure. He made up his mind. He was going to end this. Ethan went straight to the authorities, turning in the journal and the information he had uncovered. They were slow to accept it at first, but after hearing his descriptions of his grandfather's warnings and the assault in the cabin, they were troubled. An investigation was launched, and within a week or two, the men who had tracked him down were arrested. They found that they had been keeping tabs on Harold for decades, waiting for the day his secrets would be unearthed. When he passed away, they believed the information died with him. Until Ethan uncovered the safe, with the culprits behind bars, Ethan was finally able to find peace. He had honored his grandfather's will, protected his legacy, and most importantly ensured that truth triumphed. The gold, now in police custody, would be used for the benefit of veteran organizations, just the way Harold would have desired. As Ethan stood beside his grandfather's grave, he whispered, "Thank you," for ultimately, Harold had given him something more than a legacy. He had given him purpose, and that was worth more than gold.